from Clodagh, but Clodagh's got lots to say on the topic. And as always, as I always say with all of these things, it's never about me, it's always about our guests. So Clodagh, welcome to the network. We're really excited to hear what you have to say. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and thank you so much for allowing me to share my passion with the Business Support Network members. I'm just going to give you a tiny little bit of background about me. I actually started my career as a legal secretary years ago. I'm not going to say how many, but suffice to say it was a long time, and computers weren't really part of work those days. And I've known Paul for a very long time, and I'm pretty sure that Strictly were actually responsible for placing me in a couple of jobs in my career. So I worked as a legal secretary, but I was never really fulfilled, and I was never really satisfied with what I was doing. And I wanted more from my job. So I decided that I thought, well, yeah, I can be a lawyer. It's easy enough. So I went off to night school, studied to be a lawyer with the intention of being an employment lawyer, because they always seem to be the nicest ones. You know, particularly in the corporate departments, the employment lawyers were really nice people. So I thought that's where I would kind of find my people. And then the firm I was working with at the time, the managing partner actually asked me whether I would go and join the HR department as an administrator. And I did that, and the rest was history. I kind of started working in HR, really loved it, went on and did a master's in people development, did a number of roles at various different firms in London, HR manager, learning and development manager, headed up a big project, and effectively made myself redundant, which some people would consider probably wasn't the best thing to do. But that was over 10 years ago now. And in the intervening 10 years, I've been working as a consultant, trainer, and coach. And I'm just going to start my presentation now. I have done slides for today because there's a lot of information that I'm going to be sharing with you. And if you've just got to look at me while I'm talking, I think probably it's better for you to get a visual perspective. So I'm going to share my screen, which will probably take a couple of minutes. Okay. So obviously we're going to be talking about increasing your happiness and fulfillment at work. And just a little bit of background, I've told you about me, but I am only part of a dynamic duo. And my partner in crime, I know, is here with us today, Marissa. Marissa's the creative brains and genius behind the Emotional Salary Barometer. So we're part of an organization called Live Your Brand, and we're actually a people development consultancy. And our real passion is helping organizations create a culture and environment where people can thrive. And we created the Emotional Salary Barometer because we really wanted to redefine the way people feel about their work. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that later. But firstly, what you're going to need for today's session: a pen and paper, a phone or a laptop. Obviously you can use the laptop that you're using at the moment, because we're going to be hopping on to a website called Slido. If you don't know it, it's slido.com, because we're going to be doing a couple of polls, and an open mind and some curiosity. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have throughout the presentation. I prefer to do questions at the end because, as Paul said, I have got a lot to say today. And I think if I take questions throughout, it's probably going to slow me down quite a bit. So if you could feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time if you think that you might forget them, or wait until the end, and I'm more than happy to go through any questions we have. So this is what you're going to need for today. And I want to start off by putting work into perspective. Now, you might not realize, but over an average person's lifetime, you're going to spend around 90,000 hours of your life working. So if you add up that time, you know, completely, it's over 10 years and 3 months, which actually doesn't sound like a long time, but obviously that's 24 hours a day. And that's the amount of time that you're going to spend working. And if you think about how much time you spend socializing with friends over your lifetime, that's what it looks like in comparison, around 328 days in total. So what I'm trying to say here is work is a huge part of our lives. And it's really, really important that the time that you spend at work is time that you're happy and fulfilled. And this is really what prompted us to create the Emotional Salary Barometer and to do the work that we do. So if I ask you the question, why do you work? My guess is that your first instinct is probably going to be something to do with money. It could be, you know, so I have money to pay the bills, so I have money to do the things I love. But that tends to be people's first idea about why they work. So we might need to ask ourselves a slightly different question. And that question that I would encourage you to think about is, what do you love about your work? So this is where I'd love for you to go over to Slido. And the first thing it will ask you is for a code. And if you type in this code here, 39414, you will see the event Happiness and Fulfillment at Work. So if you enter onto that, it will ask you the question, what do you love about your work? And what I'd love is if you could just type in 1 or 2 words that is what you love about your work, because this will give a really, really good idea, and it'll be really interesting for all of us to see, you know, is it going to be the same? Is it going to be different for different people? Stimulus. Yep, fabulous. Okay. Flexibility, enjoyment, keeps you busy, social interaction, responsibility, people, variety. This is what I love about Slido. You can actually see, you know, the more people choose a word, the bigger the word is. So when we get lots of people contributing, you can see that variety is a really big thing for definitely some of you. Teamwork as well, purpose. Excellent. Belonging, autonomy. What I'm loving here is that I'm seeing some very familiar words that I'm going to be talking about later, because they do form part of the Emotional Salary Barometer. Okay, responsibility, sense of achievement, connection, challenges. Really nice to see those things that are coming to be most important for you. Teamwork, purpose, variety, creation. Fantastic. Okay, so I think maybe most people have contributed. We've still got some people going. Now, it's really, really important to think about what you love about your work, but it's also really important to think about those things that you don't love so much, things that you dislike about your work, because that's going to give you a much fuller picture. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is, if we move on, answer this question. What is it that you dislike about your work? Okay. And this can be anything at all that you dislike about your work. Politics. Oh, yes. Yes. Fakeness. Interesting. Yeah. Pace of change. And that can be in either direction. Sometimes people find it too fast. Sometimes people find it too slow. Yeah. Gossip, lack of freedom. Yeah. Yeah. Changes after furlough, repetitive, overwhelm. Yeah. Diary clashes. Yes. Yes, that's never an easy thing to do. Lack of fair mechanisms. Toxic people. Are you starting to see some patterns here? Are you starting to see that some of the things that we dislike about our work are opposite to a lot of the things that we love about our work? You know, if we take things like, I think, lack of freedom, I think autonomy was one of the things on the other list. Being unappreciated, absolutely, that's a huge demotivator for people. Human resources, yes, I can appreciate that, having worked in human resources. Yeah. Sales, yeah. Implicit racism, not a good thing to have to deal with. Closed-minded, yeah, closed-minded people, taken for granted. Interesting to see, you know, the key things here: difficult people, politics, toxic people, and fakeness. Interesting. Okay, so I think we've probably got a couple of people who contributed to the last one who haven't contributed to this one, but I think I'm going to move on now because we do have limited time. So what I would say is awareness is actually the first step in change. So if you think about what you love or dislike about your work, having that awareness is a really, really crucial step. And to increase our happiness and fulfillment at work, we need to get more of those things that we love and less of those things that we dislike. And this isn't always an easy thing to do. And we have to work harder on this than we actually realize. And that's because we naturally get more dissatisfied with our work over time. And there's a couple of reasons for that. There's a couple of different psychological principles that are generally at play here. And they're negativity bias and the hedonic treadmill. So for those of you who haven't heard of these before, negativity bias is really exactly what it says. It's the fact that we tend to place more weight on negative things than we do positive things. So we focus more on the negative. And when it comes to our work, that means that we're generally more likely to notice those things and to kind of pay attention to those things when they're not going well. So the negative things rather than things that are going well. And this really can contribute hugely to our unhappiness and unfulfillment at work. Now, the hedonic treadmill is another principle. And basically, if I had to simplify it, I'd say it's the fact that we take things for granted. But basically, our happiness is always tends to return to a stable baseline over time, regardless of what happens and whether it's positive, regardless of whether what happens is positive or negative. So one way to describe this is imagine your favorite food, a food that's a real treat for you. Now imagine if you ate it every day, 3 times a day. I'm guessing that you're probably not going to feel the same way about it after about 3 or 4 weeks. And this is what happens with the hedonic treadmill. Even when really good things happen to us, once we start getting used to them, we take them for granted. And our happiness tends to go back down to that baseline level. So this is really why that we need to work hard and focus on our happiness and fulfillment at work. It's not just something that either exists, something that we really need to pay attention to and do some work on. And one of the reasons why it's so important is fulfilled employees are really, really valuable, more valuable than people that are unfulfilled. And these are the reasons why. Because when people are fulfilled at work, research has shown that profits increase by, on average, around 21%. Productivity increases by 17%. Sales tend to increase by around 20%. And absenteeism decreases by a huge 41%. So This is why people who are happy and fulfilled at their work are way more valuable to an organization. And if we think about it on a more practical level, have you ever worked with somebody who's really unhappy and unfulfilled? What tends to be the impact of that? In my experience, it can have a negative impact on others as well. So this is another reason why it's really important to encourage people to be happy and fulfilled in their work. Now, when it comes to happiness and fulfillment, it can be quite tricky to measure. I mean, if I said to you, what does happiness mean to you? It's not always an easy question to answer. And when we started to think about, why do people do what they do? What makes people happy at work? We had the same problem. So what we did was we started to research exactly what it was that made people love what they do. And we looked at previous research. We came across the concept of emotional salary, but we found that it really wasn't defined. And it might be a word that's new to some of you. It's actually quite well known in Spanish-speaking countries. It seems to be much more of an established term there. So we looked to emotional salary, and again, there wasn't really a definition. So we decided that we would come up with our own definition. And the definition we came up with was very much focused on the emotional benefits that you get from your work. So nothing that has any financial element whatsoever. We're not talking about childcare vouchers. We're not talking about gym membership. We're talking about those purely emotional things that contribute to how you feel about your work. So the things that motivate you or demotivate you, and change the way you think and feel about your work. And those things quite often lead you to personal and professional development. So this is where we started with emotional salary. And as I said, we couldn't find a definition. So we decided to research really thoroughly. We had focus groups. We set up a pilot study. Our initial pilot study was done in 2 languages, in English and in Spanish. Over 22 different countries. And we've since done further studies in another couple of European languages as well, in Portuguese and Italian. And all of that research has contributed to us coming up with this framework of emotional salary that you can use to help you increase your happiness and fulfillment at work, and effectively that you can use to measure your happiness and fulfillment at work. So we created a tool that does measure emotional salary. And the tool is based on the framework, which is the 10 factors that Paul actually spoke about in the introduction. So what I'd like to do is take you through those 10 factors. And what's interesting is you'll start to see some of the things coming up that we saw when we looked at those first 2 questions about what do you love about your work and what do you dislike about your work. So these are the 10 factors that contribute to your emotional salary. And what I'm going to do with each of the factors, I'm going to give you a very simple definition of it. I'm going to tell you why it's important in terms of, your career success and being valued as an employee. And I'm also going to give you some tips on how you can increase it and therefore increase your happiness and fulfillment. So the first one we're going to start with is purpose. Now, this is a big one. Obviously, I'm just going to move some things around just in case that's covering the slide. So purpose is that feeling that you're contributing to something greater than yourself. And this is really important in uncertain times like the times we're facing at the moment. It's kind of the glue that holds everything together. And it's really important for us to feel that the organization that we work for is contributing positively to a situation. And, having a sense of purpose at work helps us feel that we are doing, that we're worthwhile. It's very much linked to our values as well. And purpose actually increases motivation, productivity, morale, and job satisfaction. And that's been proven by research. And incidentally, all of these things I'm talking about, all of the research that I'm using to contribute to this, we have references for it. So if any of you are interested, I'm more than happy to pass you those references. So what can you do to increase your sense of purpose? Well, the most important thing for me is really to think about how your role contributes both to your purpose as an individual, but to the purpose of the organization as well. And sometimes if we struggle with this, it's really thinking and appreciating all of the people that you are impacting indirectly and directly through your work. And it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what your role is, you will be having a positive impact on more people than you realize. So try to get a sense of that and really how that links in with your own sense of purpose. The next one of the 10 factors that we're going to look at is direction. Now, direction is about being able to co-create a career path. So it's about, when you work in an organization, it's, you have an idea about how you want your career to develop. And it's actually having the ability to have input into that. So it's not just somebody deciding for you, but that you actually have some control over where your career path is going. Now, when it comes to times of uncertainty, we often think about the detriment to our career. We think about the lost opportunities. But the reality is, this kind of situation that we're in at the moment can actually present us with loads of opportunities in terms of our career development. It's really important to focus on what matters most to you in terms of your career. Think about the fact that it's an opportunity for you to learn valuable new skills, to stretch and kind of move outside of your comfort zone, to try new ways of working that you might never have thought possible. All of this is going to contribute positively to your future career. So what you can do to increase your satisfaction in this area is, really think about taking control of your career development. Think flexibly, be comfortable moving out of your comfort zone. Think about what's important to you. Look for those opportunities and do it with an open mind. So the next area that we're going to look at is autonomy. And I know this was definitely something I saw come up in both, why we love our jobs and why we dislike our jobs. So this is about the freedom to manage your working style, projects and time. We're not just talking flexible working here. We're not just talking flexible working from home. This is about having control over the way you do your work. And I think it's really, really important to acknowledge the role that that autonomy plays on motivation at work. Studies have shown that people who have more autonomy are much more effective at work. They have much higher levels of motivation. And if any of you have read or seen any presentations by Dan Pink, he talks about motivation, then you'll know that autonomy is one of the key things that he talks about there. So what can you do in this area? Again, it's about exploring these possibilities. Can you set your own objectives? Can you, manage tasks in a way that works for you? Can you adjust your schedule to take into account the current situation? And I think the important thing here is not to be afraid to ask for support if you need it. What's tending to happen in the situation that we're in at the moment with people working remotely is we have two extremes. We have micromanagement, or we have people feeling that they've just been left to their own devices with no support. So we tend to feel kind of autonomy when it's at either end of that scale. So it's really, you know, don't be afraid to ask for support if that's something that you need. The next area we're looking at is creativity. So don't think of creativity in terms of traditional kind of, you know, using your hands to be creative and come up with, design wonderful things. It's more than that. It's really about having original ideas. It's about being innovative. And what's interesting here is, in a recent study, global CEOs were asked to determine what capabilities they felt were going to be most important in terms of the future of work. And creativity and innovation was the top skill that came up. So, I mean, if you think about the current situation, how we've had to adapt and innovate, and, you know, it's pushed many of us really out of our comfort zones. And, you know, that's led to many people thriving. Some people find it easier than others, but it's actually a real essential skill for the future of work. And what you can do here is, it's about getting into the habit of seeing things from different perspectives. Don't be afraid to make suggestions. Think about systems, processes. You know, how can they be changed? Are they working in the most effective way? You know, can they be adapted? Can they be improved? So this is how you might be able to use your creativity at work to improve things for your team and for the organization. And obviously, whilst contributing to your own happiness and fulfillment at the same time. So everybody wins. The next area we're looking at is enjoyment. So this is fun. And this is something that I saw a lot of when we answered those questions at the beginning. So this is about those social interactions that you have at work. So, and those moments of fun. And research demonstrates that having fun at work is associated with so many benefits: enhanced performance, enhanced satisfaction, teams getting on and working much more effectively together, our health, our ability to cope with difficult situations, and is also linked to increased stress and burnout, which is really, really important in the current times that we find ourselves in. So I think it's really important to try and take time out from your day to have fun. Do non-work related things, either with your team or with friends that you don't work with, or friends or family members that you don't work with. Talk to your work colleagues about things that are not related to work. I think one of the challenges of remote working is that, you know, we miss these kind of little interactions that we're used to having in the office. You know, just walking past someone's desk, you know, we don't get that same level of interaction. So we have to work much, much harder to try and get that in a virtual working environment. Research has also shown that when we experience more positive emotions, we're much more likely to thrive, both in our personal lives and in our working lives. So it's really important to take time to do the small things that you enjoy throughout your working day. The next area we're looking at is mastery. Now, this is about achieving excellence in your work, but it's not about perfection. It's not about, you know, saying that everything has to be perfect, but it's about having the opportunity to kind of, you know, spend enough time getting things to a point where you feel that you've done a really good job. And I think one of the challenges in modern work life is that the pace is so quick that we sometimes feel that we don't have the time we need to devote to tasks, or the time we would like to devote to tasks, and do them to the best of our ability, because things can be a little bit rushed. So I think it's really important to think about giving yourself the time that you need to do work. And if you find that you are needing extra time, then communicate that to your colleagues, to your manager. You know, it's really, really important to think about, you know, doing your best and having the opportunity to do your best, because when we don't have the opportunity to do our best, it really does impact on how we feel about our work. In terms of the research that demonstrates why this is so important and how it's connected to our happiness and fulfillment at work, it positively influences organizational performance and organizational innovation and learning. So looking at the next area, which is so important, this is belonging. So this is about feeling connected, appreciated, and valued at work. Now, belonging is a basic human need, and it becomes even more important in times of uncertainty, like the times we're facing at the moment. Now, this is a really big area. Research has shown that when people feel that they have a sense of belonging at work, it increases their commitment, it increases their motivation, and they're much more likely to go above and beyond and put in the discretionary effort that we often need when the going gets tough. Now, this is one where I think that tiny changes can actually make a difference. And tiny changes can contribute to increasing a positive culture in this area. So some of the things that you can do here is, you know, basically show your appreciation and recognition of others. That's really important. That can make a huge difference. And I'm sure there've been times where people have actually taken time to say thank you, taken time to tell you that they really appreciate work you've done, that's made a really positive impact on your day. So just be, I guess, mindful of the fact that, you know, the more we show our appreciation and recognition to others, the more of a positive impact that's likely to have. And especially at the moment, check in with your colleagues, you know, see how they're doing. You know, try and buddy up with at least one colleague, talk to them regularly, make sure they're okay. You know, make sure that they feel that they have that sense of connection, because it's something that we're having to work much, much harder on in the current climate. The next area is professional growth. So this is about your skills, your abilities, you know, your professional talents. And what's interesting here is that we're entering an era, we're already in an era of continuous learning. And businesses in the future are going to have to adapt and develop really, really quickly in order to survive. And that means that our learning and our professional skills are going to have to adapt and develop hugely as well. And this is something that a lot of people say is one of the first things to suffer when we're in a crisis situation. But I would actually argue that it's the opposite. Crisis situations actually give us a really good opportunity to develop our professional skills and abilities. It's a bit like what I was saying when I was talking about direction before. You know, it's very much about, you know, recognizing what you've learned, because pace is moving so quickly that you might not be taking stock to think about what you've learned and how you've grown as a professional during this time. So what I would encourage you to do is, you know, two things: look for opportunities where you can grow and develop, where you can stretch yourself, but also recognize the opportunities that you have and, you know, take advantage of them, share them with others, recognize what you've learned and, you know, how that's contributed to your development and will continue to contribute as you move through your professional career. So the next area is inspiration. Now, this is about having a sense of excitement, possibility, gaining new insights, and it's tough in the current situation. It's tough to kind of feel inspired, but inspiration has a really, I guess, significant impact on our well-being. Research has shown that inspiration can increase our progress towards goals. So if you have professional goals, you know, feeling inspired can actually enable you to reach those goals much more quickly. And, you know, as we said, when it's challenging, it's not always easy. So some of the things you can do is just think about who's inspired you, what's inspired you, even if it's something really, really ordinary or mundane. You know, it could be having a virtual coffee. You know, what was it about that gave you a sense of kind of feeling that good things are possible? You know, maybe it maybe a meeting gave you some new insights. And think about sharing your inspiration with your colleagues and other members in your team. So the last area now is personal growth. So this is basically about being a better human being. It's about gaining self-awareness, developing yourself as a human being. And it's actually one of the most important characteristics of modern leadership. And quite frankly, who doesn't want to be a decent human being? And if we can use our work as a platform to enable us to be a better human being, I think that's a really, really positive thing. Now, again, this is where the current situation can actually benefit us, because we tend to grow more when we are outside our comfort zones. So, but we also, I think, difficult situations bring out the best in people and the worst in people. And I think we have to be mindful of that. So it's about being compassionate with other people, helping and supporting others wherever you can. And really, again, being aware of how you're growing as an individual and how that is making a positive contribution in other areas of your life. Okay, so that is an overview of the 10 factors of emotional salary. And this gives you the basis of a framework that you can use to increase your happiness and fulfillment at work. So what I would like you to think about now is, we're going to go back and I'd like to do a little poll. Which of these 10 factors is currently lowest for you? And what you'll see is you've got a list of all 10, and if you can scroll down to see the others. And what I'd love is if you feel easy to identify which one of these factors is currently being most affected. What's lowest for you at the moment? Inspiration. Yes, I hear you. Professional growth, autonomy. Okay. Belonging. Yeah. Interesting. Personal growth as well. Yeah. Belonging. Yeah. I would say if I had to guess which one's going to come out top, I know what my guess would be, but we'll just give it a little bit more time. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. People are still having fun. Yay, that's really important. People are still having fun. One of the things that I failed to mention that I really should talk about is the fact that our emotional salary is very personal to us. So what's important for me at work and what I value about work is going to be very different to what you value about work. And we could be in the same organization doing the exact same job, but we could have very different emotional salary, because it's based on what's important for me and what I value most, and what's important for you and what you value most. Okay, I think we've probably got all the responses that we're going to get here. Okay, so belonging, which is really not a surprise given the situation that we find ourselves in at the minute with, most people working from home. Autonomy is also tends to be, in my experience, one, given that I would imagine the majority of people here are business support staff in a professional services environment, autonomy is often one that tends to be quite high in my experience. And inspiration, again, I think is being heavily affected by the current situation. But yeah, we can see, this represents exactly what I would expect, different things for different people. Okay, so importantly, what are we going to do about it? And why is happiness and fulfillment important for our career success? As I said at the beginning, awareness is the first step. Becoming aware of what you value about your work, what you love, what you dislike, what you want more of, what you want less of. But also appreciating what you currently have. If we think back to the psychological principles we looked at, the hedonic treadmill, are you really appreciating what you've got? And that's something that, it's really important to focus on. And once you start to appreciate what you've got and become aware of what you have and don't have, what you'll probably start to see is a shift in your perception. You'll start to think slightly differently about your work, and you'll start to kind of recognize, hopefully, that there are things that you can do to increase your happiness and fulfillment at work. And the important thing to say here is focus on what you can control. There are going to be things that you have no control over. That's life. There are going to be maybe certain things in relation to your autonomy. Maybe you have to work set hours. Maybe you don't have as much flexibility to organize your tasks in the way that you would like. But focus on those things that you do have control over. What can you do to make a difference to your happiness and fulfillment at work? And it's about taking responsibility for those things. What can I do? What positive steps and positive action can I take that's going to increase my happiness and fulfillment? And obviously reminding you, a third of our entire lives spent working, that's your motivation for thinking about this. Do you want to be unfulfilled and unhappy for a third of your life? It's one of the things that you can actually take control over and have some input into. So what I'd like to do now is to share with you a simple process that you can take to start working on your emotional salary. And the first step is, as I said, identify the emotional benefits that you're getting from your work. Think about what's missing. What emotional benefits are you not getting? Be proactive. Look for opportunities to get more of what you want, and it might not be an easy thing to do. It might make you slightly uncomfortable. You might have some kind of fear around doing it, but the benefits are worth it. So what action, when you look for these opportunities, what action or decisions do you need to take? It may be that you think about your emotional salary, you identify the benefits you're getting, you identify what's missing, and you come to a decision that actually, I'm not sure I can be happy in this role. And that's a decision, that it's something that you might need to take into account. The next thing to think about is, what conversations do you need to have? What conversations are going to help you get more of what you want and less of what you don't want? And finally, it's about taking that responsibility and taking control of your happiness and fulfillment at work as far as you're able, focusing on those things that you have control over. Now, I know that there are many of you here that actually manage teams. So obviously the focus of this session has very much been on your own emotional salary. but the principles are exactly the same when you're thinking about your teams. So all of those individual actions that we looked at that can help you increase your own emotional salary, think about, how you can adapt those things to help increase the emotional salary of your team. Now, in terms of what you can do next, you can discover your emotional salary and get a free coaching session. So as I explained earlier, we've developed the Emotional Salary Barometer, which is a tool that measures emotional salary, that measures each of these 10 factors. And what it does is it gives you an individual personalized report about your emotional salary and an action plan identifying, which of the elements are most important to you and giving you advice on things that you can do to increase your emotional salary. So if you want to kind of discover your emotional salary, you can take the Emotional Salary Barometer. And I'm going to be sharing my website details in a little while where you can find out more about that. Anybody who decides that they want to discover their emotional salary in the next week, after watching this webinar, will receive a free coaching session. So that's something that's actually worth more than the Emotional Salary Barometer. So it's definitely worth doing if that's something that you're interested in. So that's one step you can take. Another step, I do recognize that many of you are managing teams and it's not an easy situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. So what we're actually doing is we're offering a free 30-minute call to any managers to talk about how they can increase or maintain the emotional salary of their team in the current situation. So if that's something that you'd like to take advantage of, again, I'm going to share my contact details. Please do get in touch to organize that. And then another thing you can do is keep up to date. We're regularly posting information. We share little tips, tricks, exercises, activities that you can do. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, then you'll be kept up to date in everything that we're doing. We're currently developing a range of different training courses. So if you're on our newsletter, you'll be notified of exactly what's coming up in the future. And follow us on LinkedIn. We have a company page on LinkedIn where, again, we generally post 2 or 3 times a week, and again, sharing ideas, tips, insights on how you can increase both your own emotional salary and the emotional salary of your team. And the other thing, if you're curious, if this has kind of piqued your curiosity and you want to learn more about emotional salary, about the concept and how it might work, then we have a free quiz on our website. And, it's got 2 different stages, and you can use it to explore in a little bit more depth the 10 factors that I've talked about. It tells you why the factors are important. And it's a little bit of fun, and we would encourage you to, you can use this quiz with your team. If you decide, well, actually, I want to get my team thinking about their emotional salary, I want to work with my team to help develop emotional salary, then the quiz might be a really good place to start. We know that we have had some teams who've introduced an element of competition and done the quiz together and tried to see who could get the highest score. So that's maybe an element to introduce a little bit of enjoyment and fun into your team. So I will say thank you at this stage, just before I share my details, and then I'm happy to go to questions and answer any questions that you may have. So here's my contact details, and please do connect with me on LinkedIn. As well as the Emotional Salary page, I also share personally kind of insights, experience, and tips on emotional salary. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the chat to see what questions we may have coming in. Let's have a look. Okay. Wow, nice to see people from all over the UK. Fantastic. Scotland, Liverpool, great. Aberdeen. Don't worry, it's raining here in Madrid as well. So, okay, London, lack of support. Okay. Yes, negativity does bring people down, Jacqueline. Very, very true. Okay. Okay, some thank yous. Any questions from anybody? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to take down those contact details if you need them.
That was hi Clodagh, it's Paul here.
Hello.
Hello. That was fantastic, as I knew it would be.
I have no idea of time. Did I didn't go over, did I? Oh my gosh.
No. We're really good for time. We're really good for time. And whilst we're waiting for, it was super thorough, but whilst we're waiting for some questions to come through, what I'd like to say is I've taken the barometer, and when Clodagh and I were talking about it, first of all, I had a very specific answer right at the very beginning, which we discussed, and then kind of diving into taking the test and having a look, it really kind of dug out a lot of things that were really surprising to me, which you kind of hadn't really kind of considered or thought too much about. So it's a really fantastic tool, and I know that there's been a number of different HR individuals that's been on this call today. It's worth noting that Clodagh and I are in the process of putting perhaps another session together that is kind of focused on that side of things and talking about the teams. So we'll be announcing that and putting a little bit more detail behind that soon, won't we, Clodagh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we primarily work with organizations to help them, identify emotional salary in teams and organizations, and develop a framework that they can put in place to increase happiness and fulfillment. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. We have a question that's come through.
Oh, fantastic.
I'll read it out to you. Would you recommend a coaching session beforehand in order to get people into thinking a little bit wider than I work for the paycheck? So is that something that you would suggest first of all?
So just to explore a little bit more context, before what? So before doing the barometer, or before talking to the team about emotional salary, or?
Yeah, I think Tara, that was a question from you. Is that before taking the barometer, or what's?
I can unmute. Yeah, before using the barometer, because I think you're absolutely right, Clodagh, in your opening statement about why do you come to work. I can hear a number of for the money. And then there is often, and we've had situations before where we've explored that, there are often some very uncomfortable and lengthy silences that follow when you start to push beyond that.
Yeah.
So is it something that you would give people the barometer and just leave them to their own devices to come up with a response, or would you recommend almost a bit of an introduction to it and some of the background that you've shared with us?
I think it's always really helpful for people to have the background. And when we work with teams, one of the first things that we generally tend to do is to introduce the concept of emotional salary. And, really the idea that, we spend a huge amount of our time working. Life's short. Let's make the most of it. And it's, as a manager, you're asking the question, what can I do to make your time at work better? We're in a difficult situation. For many managers, you've got huge constraints. You may be asked to cut numbers, pay freezes, pay reductions. Yes, it's about that. That's a very difficult situation to deal with, but it's about saying to people, look, these are things that we can control. These are things that we can do. So let's focus on what can make work better for you. But yeah, I absolutely can appreciate the kind of comments that you get. Yeah, without a doubt.
So
Thank you.
We've had another question come through from somebody who is a PA at the moment, but they're thinking about changing direction. They've had a look at human resources, they've had a look at marketing, but they're finding it difficult how to figure out what they're going to be good at if they haven't had that experience outside of the PA sphere. So the direct question is, how is best to go about finding where my strengths lie and what role I would be suited to?
So I think there's a couple of different things here. I think it's firstly, think about what do you love and what are you good at? And out of those things, what is transferable into other roles? So, you know, for a lot of PAs, their strengths lie in organizing, in arranging things. You know, can those skills be put to really good use in other professions, in other areas? And I think the other thing is, you know, focus on what your strengths are. And there's actually a really, really helpful free tool, which is from VIA, which is the Strengths Finder. And that can give you a good idea about your strengths. So that might be something that you want to look at as well. But I would say focus on what you think about, what you enjoy, and what you can do is you can use the barometer to think about, okay, these elements, what is it that's important to me? Is autonomy really important to me? Is, you know, belonging really important to me? I would say if belonging is really important to you, probably you don't want to be self-employed because you'll find yourself working on your own a lot. So it's about looking, you can look at these 10 factors and identify, okay, which of these are important to me, and use that as well as a decision on where you would like your career to go in the future. I think that when you've got this, when you're a PA, you've got such a broad baseline of skills, you can go anywhere. I know I'm biased because I was a PA, but I really do think you have so many skills that you can use to take you into pretty much any job in the world. Diplomacy, organization, time management. There's probably no job that you can't do.
Fantastic. Well, look, there's been some amazing comments coming through, and a lot of people have clearly found the session really, really useful. So on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The presentation was so well prepared, so concise. There was, you know, it's kind of no grey areas whatsoever. So I personally thought it was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed it, and clearly everyone else did as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And sorry to throw so much information at you in such a short period of time. I know it was a lot to get your head round, but you know, I'm happy to provide a copy of the slides, Paul, if you think that's something that people will find useful, just to kind of refresh your memory on things.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You know, as I said, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Just get in touch. And if you are a manager, you know, take us up on our offer. You know, we're happy to have a chat about how you can help support your team at the current time.
Fantastic. And there's there was some amazing value adds within that as well. So thank you for offering those up, Clodagh. We really appreciate it. The slides would be fantastic, and we will get busy behind the scenes now, kind of sorting out the recording, so we can put that up for people to watch as well at their leisure. They can kind of rewind and watch it whenever they want. But listen, Clodagh, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And as I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, Clodagh and I will be back for a little bit more of a specific talk, which kind of delves into it a little bit deeper, which will be just as informative, and it should be great, to be fair. So thank you in advance for that. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Great to see everybody from Madrid, from Aberdeen to Stoke to here in Petswood. Very exotic. It's great to see the spread kind of reaching far and wide. Thanks to everyone for all your support as always. We've got a couple of great things coming up next week. We've got one on mindset, we've got one on social media. So you'll see the details of those coming up very, very soon. So thanks as always for your support. It means the world to me and all of us. And thank you as well, Clodagh. We really, really appreciate the time and effort you put into that.
Very welcome. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yes, please. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, everyone. And we'll see you all soon.
Thanks.